Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
You hear me as well? Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Alastair, joined by Henrik here. Despite the fact that I'm wearing a hoodie, I can assure you that I do in fact work with EY. And we're going to cover today a project that we've been working on in Germany with Bochum. We're going to run through the points at the bottom, how we approached the project, what our role was as EY, who we worked with, some of the lessons we learned. The project was very much focused around research. So then in the second part of the presentation, we're also going to get into the emerging idea of federation for direct care as well, and some of the early work that's taking place for that as well. But we didn't introduce ourselves. Do you want to introduce yourself, Henrik?
Yeah, sure, quickly, yeah. So my name is Henrik Thiess. I work at EY as a solution architect. I've been on the project with Bochum right from the beginning, so I'm quite happy to be here and to share my experience with you.
Super. And I work in the UK and Ireland with EY, and I lead healthcare technology. And I'll tell you a little bit later about what EY are currently doing in health as well. So we'll start with a little bit of background on the client. What was their problem? What was their challenges? And I'm going to ask maybe Henrik to take you through that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, our client is the Ruhr University of Bochum. Let's just call it Bochum for now. It's a rather large university hospital in the west of Germany, and it comes with one specialty. So it's not your typical university hospital, which is one large hospital. Instead, it's more like a network of 8 different clinics, which are quite separated to each other. Let me explain. So each of those 8 clinics, they are operated by different organizations, and they also all come with their different and individual IT infrastructure. So yeah, overall it's quite a heterogeneous landscape to work in. Coming to the next slide, here you see the vision of Bochum, our client. So they wanted to they saw that all their data, which they have a lot of course, in all the 8 clinics, is being siloed away in proprietary systems and like the different hospital information systems in the different clinics and all the other systems around that. And they want to make this data available to research and to 3 different levels of research. So the first level is to make the data available for researchers within the clinics. So that is the local research. Then the second level is the central research to make the data available within the networks within the 8 clinics. And then they also want to contribute their data to national research efforts through the German Medical Informatics Initiative, which is the national level of research. And to do that, as you can see here, the client wanted us to set up for each of their clinic one local data management store, which in the end is just an openEHR-based data repository. And then all this data should feed in the CDM, which is the central data management, which is located at the university itself. And in the end, all the data should end up in there, where then we can be made available to national research. Okay, then we can go to the next slide. Now we come to the project overview, so what we did there, or what we are still doing there. So here is a quick overview about the architecture we implemented there. I will talk you through it from the left to the right. So all the way to the left, you have the source systems of the 8 clinics. There you find data in your typical standards. Some of it is in FHIR, mainly it's all HL7 version 2 though. And then we transform this data into 8 local data management solutions, which are powered by openEHR, and here we use Vita Group HIP CDRs, and 8 of them, of course. After all this data transformation is done, the data here is available for local research, and then the data from there must move here into the central research domain. And here the data leaves the clinical context, so therefore the patient must give their consent that the data can be used for research. We must pseudonymize the data. We also need a master patient index and so on. For that, we installed an honest broker, which you see here in between those systems. This is a tool which deals with the pseudonymization and so on. And yes, after the data arrives here in the central research domain, it's available for central research. And then, after another level of pseudonymization, it is available for national research as well through the Medical Informatics Initiative. Okay, what data are we talking about? So the data models, they do not come from us, they come from the Medical Informatics Initiative as well. And the data or the information models, they are split into two parts. One are the base modules, which are things like diagnosis, procedures, lab results, medication, person and encounters. And then we have a lot of extension modules as well. And our goal was, of course, to cover all the base modules and then some of the extension modules. And with that, back to you, Alastair.
Okay. Maybe just one point before we move on. You'll sort of notice here, we've got local infrastructure using openEHR, and then onto the right, the central infrastructure, there's actually a Firebase repository there as well. And sometimes when we show this slide, we get the question like, why is that set up in that way? And I think one of the things we've learned is actually by bringing the data in and modeling it in openEHR, it gives you choice and flexibility. In this case, the client wanted the data to be in a FAR format. The tooling on the right supported that format. But by bringing it in and putting that effort into that local data environment, we were able to make choices like that to align with the client's needs and be pragmatic. It doesn't always need to be the case that everything needs to be openEHR. Just to maybe make that point, which I hope, Henrik, is fair enough. So what was our role in terms of where did EY come into this? What did we do? Maybe just a small step back to kind of give you guys a view of what we do in health. We've quite a global health practice now across America, EMEA, and in the Asia Pacific. We work with hospitals, regions, local health ministries. But one of the things we find is that the skills that we need for these digital transformation and healthcare projects are really quite specific. So clinical informatics, data interoperability. It's really very hard to build that in every local area that we work. So we've established a centre of excellence that Henrik works within. And we've now got around 40 or 50 people who work in our centre of excellence. And that provides a core group of really high-skilled health technologists and clinical informaticians who can support all of these projects that we deliver across the world. And the projects that we get involved in are really diverse. It's not just data interoperability, it's supporting clients with strategy, it's supporting clients with organizational change. One of the big things that I'm trying to do with EY is I think traditionally we've been very much focused on, or probably we're recognized as being more strategy and advisory. Increasingly we're getting more into delivery. So really working hand in glove with clients like Bochum to deliver projects into production using partners and other alliances to really help clients solve problems and really moving to the right of that digital delivery across a whole range of different projects. We've got a really diverse team in Ireland. I work with actually over 40 clinicians every day alongside some of the technologists that I've mentioned. So it's a really diverse team. But we can't always do it by ourselves, right? So there's really complicated scenarios. We need to work with partners and alliances. In this example here, with Bochum, we formed a consortium with Vita Group and Fraunhofer. Hope I've pronounced that correctly. And it's really, in this example, EY are, if you take the building analogy here, the prime contractor, managing the delivery, overall management of the data protection framework, consent model, all the change management around that, with Vita Group providing that underlying technology. And we do this really quite often with a bunch of different partners, really trying to bring together the best in breed consortium that helps clients solve a problem. So really keen to talk to people here who maybe feel that they could support us with other projects that you guys might have and really how to build the next set of consortiums and partnerships. Okay, so maybe move on, Henrik, to lessons learned. I think hopefully we can reflect. There's some quite generic points down the left-hand side here, but hopefully what Henrik's going to do is really try and pull out a couple of examples from the Bochum project, really to bring this to life a little bit. I think the picture on the right reflects the first point. These guys on the right they're in the house they're building, but they're still reworking the plan. We've probably all been there. What we find, and many will be familiar, is adopting an agile and an iterative approach is really key. But Henrik, what's any examples of how that was demonstrated, any lessons learned from the project?
Yeah, for example, for Bochum, I told you before that we set up a trusted third party, the tool, the honest broker, which deals with data pseudonymization. Here the requirement by the client was to use open source tools and a specific set of open source tools, which we never used before. So we took the challenge, we had a look at the tools, and we noticed that they do not really fit in this special scenario with our client having 8 separate clinics. But of course, there are workarounds which you can figure out, and we found those solutions. And the more we worked with the tool, the more we learned about it. So it was really key to stay flexible, to still keep this tool into the overall architecture, because the moment you discover new things in the tool, all the processes around the tool, must be adapted as well. So flexibility here is really key.
Thanks, Henrik. And then when it comes to implementation, a lot of the time we get asked, is it a big bang approach? Is it clinic by clinic? How do you approach the actual rollout of a project like this? But maybe you could touch on, Henrik, how we approach that in this case.
Yeah, at Bochum, before we deploy things for the first time, of course, we don't start with all the 8 clinics at once. We always select one pilot clinic. And then I think it's a win-win situation, because either the deployment is a success, everyone is happy, then all the other clinics see that it will also work on their side, or we tried new things there, right? Because sometimes things also fail, and then at least we only have to fix one system and not 8 of them. So clearly it's a win-win. Thanks,
Henrik. And data quality is obviously one of the big challenges. A lot of the data in these source systems quite often poorly classified, uncoded, duplicated. What did you uncover on the Bochum project, and any lessons learned for the guys listening here today?
Yeah, so here the lessons learned clearly is that getting data transformed into openEHR, it's quite a lot of work. It's quite different, but it's very, very worth it. Because the moment you have the data in openEHR, transforming it to other standards, for example, to FHIR, to send it to different systems, or to display it to the user, it's quite easy. But you need that one common information model which openEHR provides. Once you have that, the rest becomes easy. And really getting it to there, it took us very long, because we're dealing with 8 clinics, so 8 hospital information systems, 8 laboratory information systems, and so on. So many HL7 messages need to be transformed.
And you talked about consent earlier. I think that's always a challenging area. What challenges did you overcome there, and what are the lessons for the audience?
So in Germany we have this broad consent. It's a consent a person can sign in the hospital so that the data can be used for secondary use, so for research. And the issue with this is that there are multiple versions of this consent, and even within the versions you can do local adaptations and so on. And even if you deal with that, again, on the horizon there are other things, for example, European health data space, which might again affect this whole consent topic. And here our lessons learned really is to just start with one consent and start implementing it, because if you wait for this always ongoing discussion about this topic to finish, you will never be able to go live.
And this question actually came up earlier around governance of the openEHR templates and the models, especially in this federated environment where you need that consistency across that network of participants. Did you crack that yet, or what's the status quo of the situation around the governance?
I think here we are quite lucky that we can leverage what HIMED already did. So HIMED and the Medical Informatics Initiative, they created the archetypes and parts of the templates we use at Bochum. But here the question for us rather is what happens if those information models change, and then we also have to change our whole system around it, and we need to update it. We might have to deal with different versions of data then. And as we are currently setting everything up, we actually did not really deal with it yet, so we are still in the process of finalizing and figuring this one out.
And finally, any words you can share on like what was the impact of what we've delivered and the outcomes, and how was that measured?
Yeah, in the end, like we do not serve a specific research use case. Instead, what our goal is to really make as much data from all the silos available to the researchers, and on all three levels I explained before. So on local level within the clinic, on central level within the network of clinics, and then also on a national level through the Medical Informatics Initiative in Germany.
Thanks, Henrik. So moving on to federation, this is the diagram that Henrik shared at the start. And this is probably a data aggregation model rather than federation. You've got 8 local clinics. They're pushing data into this central environment for research. But one of the use cases that a lot of our clients are asking about is how do we extend that for direct care? And how do we do it in a way where the data doesn't necessarily need to be replicated into an external environment? So there's quite a lot of work going on around this. There's a federation working group that's been established. And the idea at a really high level is that you could have these local openEHR-based repositories which can be queried in real time using standard AQL with a global federator function that aggregates this information together across those federated nodes. The top 3 examples are like proprietary systems that don't support openEHR. So as Henrik showed earlier, they would require an export out into a local CDR to store that information locally. Or equally, if you have a system that natively supports openEHR, like this example at the bottom, you can query that directly. So this is, again, very, very early days. We're working with some of these principles. How do we do this in a way where it conforms to standard AQL? How do we do it in a way where these individual nodes can be autonomous? They can operate independently. And it can be very modular as well, where it can integrate into different environments. So the business logic of how this information is presented, for example, that would all be the responsibility of the application that consumes these APIs, rather than trying to introduce this logic into the middle. So we've established a working group. There's 12 companies that are part of this. The idea is that we'll bring this to the openEHR SEC, I think, when does it say? Before the end of the year, and really try to align the approach and bring that hopefully into the openEHR specification. This example on the right is a sandbox environment that EY have set up just to demonstrate this idea in action. This is 2 repositories, one from Vita Group and one from Better. So that's the architecture presented on the previous slide, where that information is pulled back from both repositories in real time and presented. One of our partners actually in Northern Ireland is considering trialing this out with a local client there as well to try and road test this in a customer-facing environment, which I'm sure will give us further lessons from that experience. So yeah, that's the approach. That's the plan. It'd be great, I guess, to get more people involved. Eric Vermeulen is leading this from one of my colleagues from EY. He's really helped set this up. So it'd be great to continue that and really move that forward. So that's our presentation today. There's a bunch of us here. It's not just Henrik and I. Come and chat to us. We've got Sylvia, who's at the front. We've got Rashanya, Naveen, and Marika as well, all colleagues from the DEC, the Centre of Excellence I mentioned earlier. One more thing. You may have noticed there's an ever so slight shadow above my upper lip. I'm actually raising money for Movember, which is a charity that's raising money for men's health, so prostate cancer, mental health. So any donation, no matter how small, will be hugely appreciated. So thank you for listening, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you both for the great presentation. Who has questions?
No hard questions, Gary. Yeah.
Can you just give us like a bit of an update on where you think NHS England's going to go with openEHR and the national platform and things, Alastair, if you're able to?
I'm not sure. Oh, I'm still mic'd up.
Ask him again during lunch.
Yeah. I don't know if I can really answer that one, to be honest. I think they're considering options, probably. So West Streetings, obviously, we heard from Tony Blair Institute this morning. West Streetings made an announcement about a national patient record. I think there's lots of options that could be possible that they approach it like this. It could be a central model. It could be an expansion of a shared care record. That all needs to be worked through. So, yeah, interesting question. Thanks.
Thanks. The theory of bringing data from different platforms together into a single chart and the technical aspects of doing that probably pale into insignificance compared to clinicians' willingness to accept that kind of practice. In my experience, they're very resistant to data from different sources being merged together into a chart like the one you showed.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering whether you've experienced that kind of pushback on this as yet, but I'd certainly expect it if you tried to do much with things like pathology data, for example.
And how do you see that with shared care records? Do you see that kind of challenge?
The typical representation in the shared care records at the moment, as they stand, if there's data in there from multiple institutions, even though technically they could be presented on the same chart, they're typically presented as this is the chart from one hospital, this is the chart from another hospital, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that's not because it can't be done.
Yeah.
It's just because people won't accept that practice going on in the platform, unfortunately.
I think certainly one of the key things will be making sure the provenance is really clear. I think I talked about kind of on the right-hand side, the business logic. There's a lot of work that would need to be done around user research and actually how do you integrate this into clinical workflows. We haven't got to that yet, you know. So
I think for research purposes, you know, fine. Yeah. But when it comes to clinical practice, much more difficult.
Yeah, fair point.
Great presentation there. My interest is on research. And I like the way you gave that scenario around consent and the piece about, I wanted to check if you could be kind to just put a bit more meat around the bones on that one. In terms of, say, when you have layers of how people can consent. So we've had a panel where we're consulting with the patients, and some of them a little bit skeptical when the collaboration is being done with companies they perceive to be profit-making. So in that consent piece, if you could just be kind just to, you know, share whether, you know, the feasibility of what could be a better way of addressing that, because I like the point you raised that we shouldn't try and get it all done right. We should just get a bit of it and proceed it iteratively, otherwise it won't go anywhere. But my main thrust is on how we can get that consent piece agreed, but also if it means that on the authorization piece, when somebody's authenticated, some piece of data won't be able to be available for the researcher if they are coming from a different entity, but if they are seen as public sector or, you know, what the patient has agreed to. So maybe, hopefully my question is clear there.
Yeah, I think, yeah, getting the consent from the patient, I think it's quite a delicate topic. And also for us, we have those 8 clinics, and I think all of them will deal differently with how they can get, on how they will approach the patient on this. And I think it's all about, educating the patient. And the consent here we are using, luckily, it's a broad consent. So it's just one consent you have to sign, and you cannot really, in the consent, you have some choice. There are some like modules or checkboxes as a patient you can check, but it's not about like, which data point. It's more about what can be done with the data. If that is understandable. But yeah, in the end, it's the clinic's decisions, and I think there's not a clear answer, and there must be always an individual way. Yeah.
So in this case, your future is a federated approach where all data is going to be siphoned into one place, or the one that tries to read from the source. Is that where?
For Bochum, it's still this model here. Yeah. So. Yeah, that's probably more beyond research for direct care and not necessarily aligned with what Bochum are doing, but what a number of other clients that we're talking to are looking at.
Thank you, Alastair and Henrik. And let's give them another applause. And